Hello again. Hey, Rachel.
Hello. Were you and Liz just on chat?
We were.
Nice.
Yep.
I just realized I didn't take a look at our RSVPs. I know a lot of people are still kind of in summer mode and out of town. But I also know a lot of people have Scrivener questions, so hopefully that means
Yeah.
that we'll have a good turnout.
I can't believe next week is September,
I know,
but I
right?
say that at the end of every month. So, yeah, you've got 12 people signed up for today. So,
Yeah, Judy just messaged and said she just got back from Killer Nashville, so she's not going to make it. So that's one of the 12. But well, we still have we have 2 minutes. We're earlier than I thought we
we're
were.
early. Yay. Cool, cool. I'm hoping to be on the coaching call tomorrow. Drive my butt to my cafe today to rewrite a scene, and I want to make sure I'm in the zone. So, I've blocked off noon Eastern tomorrow.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Long time no see. It really feels that way. I was just saying, I'm not sure how many people still feel like they're in summer mode or how many people are gonna turn up tonight, but we'll give it just another minute or so.
And I'll be here for the first hour or so, and then being very Portuguese, I have a chicken in the oven that I'll have to go tend to, but that's all good. So,
Yeah, and I mean, I have a little demonstration prepared, but it's not going to be a 2 hour long demonstration. So it'll really depend how many questions you all have and stuff. Hey, Vicky. Um,
Vicky,
how many Scrivener questions you all have. I'm happy to stay on as long as we need to get everybody's questions answered, but
cool.
it also might be a little on the shorter side tonight just because of the subject matter.
I
Yeah.
got my so I use a PC for work, which I'm on right now because I have the three screens, and then I have I use a Mac which has Scrivener on it, and my company allowed me to put Scrivener on download the PC version and put it on my computer, but then they upped the security protocols and everything. They were like, no more outside software. And I was like, dang. But I just got a new laptop, and the tech guy was like, is there anything else you want me to put on here? And I'm like, can I have Scrivener? He's like, yeah, I'll give you Scrivener. It's fine. So woo-hoo.
Nice. Oh, good.
Breaking the rules, breaking the rules.
Yeah.
That's my
Oh, that's
thing.
great. And if anybody is using the Mac version of Scrivener, one kind of cool thing, yeah, that one kind of cool thing there is that you can actually, if you put files in the cloud, you can access them on your phone and on your iPad too with the
Really?
app version of Scrivener. And I have found that very handy, like if I'm traveling and I just want to take my iPad and not take my whole laptop with me because I've got a MacBook Pro, so it's a little bit chunkier than an iPad.
I
And
had no idea I could even put Scrivener on my phone. Oh, but it's going to charge
So,
me again.
but
Okay.
they will say, so they said one of their sets of instructions says that make sure you save it and close it on device one before opening it on device two.
Right.
correct, it gets very confused if you have it say open on your laptop and then you go and open it on your phone when you're out and about. Yeah, I do think that there is a separate charge for the app version.
It's 14.95, and
Yeah.
you can do it from Windows also.
Oh,
Or
I'm
Oh, you can
Canadian,
do
so
it
it's
from Windows now?
29.99.
oh, okay.
Oops.
Ooh,
I just bought it yesterday.
Oh,
you got a
nice.
big upcharge, Rachel. That surprises me.
Yeah, usually it's only like with books and stuff, like if a book is 29.99 in the US, it might be 32.99 here just
Right.
because of the conversion.
That's more
That's
what
a
I
that's a big jump. I think I'll just stick with it on my computer. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. Hey, Beverly. Okay. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. And if a couple of other people come in, then we can um, we can, oh, there's Kim too. Okay. Then we can go from there. Okay, so I've kind of got two things that I'm going to show you. I have like sort of the beginner level structure that you can use in Scrivener. And then I will show you my manuscript, which I think I've shown you all at alternate points in the past. And that is like advanced user level because I've got multiple points of view and multiple timelines. But I don't want to just jump into that because I feel like you'll be like, ah, and you might not have anything that complex in your manuscript. And the first thing I want to say is that I have been using Scrivener since I would say it's been more than 10 years. I think I started using it in 2012. So I've been using it for a long time. And when I started using it, I did not instantly jump into using all of the features that we're going to talk about right now. You can really use it so that it's just barely like it's Word plus just a couple of little things. You don't have to immediately jump in with using all of the different bells and whistles that Scrivener has. But what you can do is once you get comfortable with everything, you can add one thing. And my YouTube channel is a good place to go to find one thing to add because I tend to do little like one-off videos on different aspects. So we're going to look at the cork board tonight. And if you're not ready to start using the cork board, whenever you feel like you might be ready to use the cork board, you can just add that to your repertoire by looking at the YouTube video. And I am not by any means the only person that's out there making YouTube videos about how to use Scrivener. If you do a search, you'll find other people as well and people who are using it in different ways. You know, a lot of the stuff that I do is based off of four-act structure, but there are actually templates for Lisa Cron has a template for Scrivener. I'm pretty sure that there's a Save the Cat version that Jessica Brody did that does that structure. So there's all different kinds of templates and stuff that you can use so that you're not having to build from zero. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's jump in here and take a look at, let's see, I'm in corkboard view right now and I want to put it in scrivenings first. And I did not put any text in this document, so it's going to look a little bit different too. It's a big blank document, but we'll start. Okay, so you can see here my big blank document template that I made for tonight's Craft Magic webinar in Scrivener. And there are lots of different panes and lots of things going on here. But all you need to know is if you want to just use it as a word processor, you can just start typing. And this is itty bitty bitty bitty. So that's not that I know that's really hard to see, but you can make that larger or smaller as you need to. So you've just basically got a big central window right here that you can use at just like a Word document. And you could put your entire manuscript right here. In fact, if you're trying to use Scrivener for the first time and you have a whole manuscript that you want to copy and paste over, I would recommend just starting by going into one of these windows and just copying and pasting the entire thing in just as a way to get yourself started so that you have your manuscript in the in Scrivener. And then of course you'll want to each time save save your file. Make sure that you know where you've saved it because it will save it in like a Scrivener system file if you don't put it in your My Documents folder. I know people that have come to me and said, I've lost my entire Scrivener project, and it's because they didn't save it where they thought it was going to be saving. So when if you have put your whole manuscript in here and then you're like, but I know that's not how Julie's using it, so what should I do? This is where your left hand binder, this is called the binder on the left hand side, is really, really helpful to you. And what this is just a sort of file navigation window to give you a view of your story. So you'll see at the top, we've got our manuscript, and I have done, like I said, 4-act structure. So you'll see here, this will be familiar from our big structure talk that we had a couple weeks ago. Part 1, orphan, part 2, wanderer, part 3, hero, part 4, martyr. If you want to reinforce your like 4-act structure in the manuscript yourself, you can take that big document that you copied and pasted over into Scrivener, and you can start breaking it out by parts first and then also by chapters. Some people skip this step of and just use an individual. So these white boxes are documents and the blue boxes are folders, right? Pretty familiar to everyone just from your from whatever your file manager looks like on your computer. So some people skip breaking out things out by chapter and just have one little document for each chapter. I like to group my chapters together and do have one document per scene. Either way is fine. One document could be a chapter or one document could be a scene. It's really up to you. For me, it really helps me reinforce that scene structure that we've been talking about a lot, to make sure if you break your chapter out into scenes, that you've got a clear scene goal, that you've done your grounding to let people know where we are in time and space at the beginning of a scene, to make sure that I'm not just like sort of loosey-goosey summarizing a bunch of scenes. If you break them out into the discrete parts, that can be a really helpful way to make sure that you're using good scene structure as you write. So we've got the manuscript up here, but there are also some other little bells and whistles down here. And this is where I start to think that Scrivener is very, very useful. So for example, you can add character sketches for each of your characters in the story. This is where you can put what their misbelief is, what their motivation is, what are the key things about their backstory, what is it that they want that is different from what the other characters want. So you can just, the default, it doesn't come with any characters in it, but you can add, using this little plus button up here, you can add character sketches, and this can be your main character. And then you can add a character sketch for your love interest. You can add a character sketch for your antagonist, the best friend, the sidekick, all of those types of things. Now, the templated information that comes in the character sketch is not all 100% useful, right? Like I don't find it particularly useful to write a lot about a character's physical description in their character sketch. However, if you are a person who has your main character have blue eyes in one chapter and brown eyes in another chapter and green eyes in another chapter and hazel eyes in another chapter, which I have seen before with clients, if that's something that you forget regularly, you could just note it here. If you're trying to, if you have a key physical descriptor, like somebody who's always snapping their fingers, or somebody who's always fiddling with their glasses or something like that. That's the kind of stuff that I think is worthwhile to capture here. So that can be a really useful thing to do with your character sketches, just to refer back to as you're writing. It's also good if you have big ensemble casts of characters, to note spelling of names and what country they're originally from and all of that kind of stuff. So too with the places, you can have a setting sketch. So this could be like your main character's homeland, and you could have like um, antagonist's homeland, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I know some of you were at my world building workshop for World Shift this weekend, and we talked about like what are the power structures between the main characters and the antagonists and that sort of thing. And it could be that as you're defining the places that happen in your story, that one of them has been the oppressor in this story world, and one of them has been the oppressed, and you might note that kind of power dynamic under places here. I tend to put a lot of things under notes and research because, like I said, I don't particularly find the character sketches and the place sketches as useful in my own process, but your mileage may vary. So I use the notes quite a bit. I'll put my log line and pitch. I'll put a synopsis in here. I will put a cast of characters. I tend to, when I do my cast of characters, I actually tend to put place names in there as well. Again, for me, just so that I'm really bad about like spelling things different ways in different chapters and putting the accents in the wrong places and all of that kind of stuff, and capturing that here in the notes or under the research can really help. If you are somebody who has looked up, like say, well, I'll just use an example from my own story. I've been doing a lot of research into the flora and fauna of Iceland because that is an important part of my story. And I keep having to look up again and again the same websites. I can just start to capture them here under research so that I have them right at the tip of my fingers, so that I don't have to keep refinding the pieces over and over again. So this is just really the nice thing about Scrivener to me is it is a collection of everything about your story that can stay in one place that you can look at all at once. You can put timelines in here. You can put you can put uh, any details that you've gathered, like if you're using Story Genius to gather misbelief and backstory and key turning point scenes and that type of stuff, all of that can go in here. And then you just have it available to refer to as you're writing. It's just a nice supporting tool. So the other thing that you can do, we've talked about the binder and we've talked about the main window, but we have this window over here on the right side that has a couple of different options. And a couple of key things. So you've got 5 little options across the top here that'll change what appears on this right-hand side. So this include and compile is an important one to know about. So this obviously Microsoft Word is the industry standard for the publishing industry. If you're sending something to an editor or an agent, or even to a beta reader or a critique partner, you're going to want to send it to them not in Scrivener format, but in Word format. And in order to do that, you're going to do what's called a compile. And that's going to take everything that you've put only in your manuscript portion of Scrivener up here, and put it into a Word doc. So it's not going to copy across all your character sketches and your front matter and stuff unless you want it to. There's ways to turn that on and off, and one of the ways that you do that is by clicking include and compile. So I only use include and compile for the files and chapters and scenes that are a part of the manuscript itself, not for all of the stuff that happens below the manuscript. The other thing that you can do here, I don't really use this very much, is you can set up custom metadata. I know some people who use this if they're doing like multiple points of view. I use color coding, and we'll get to that in a minute. But you could use custom metadata. So you could assign main character 1 as metadata, and then put that in all the chapters that main character 1 shows up in, and main character 2 can get a tag in his or her chapters. So this information that you're setting up over here is specific to a particular document. Um, a particular scene or chapter that you have over here on the other side. Okay. You can also use keywords because again, if like say for example that you have a trilogy, Liz and I were just talking about the trilogy for her book. You could, if you wanted to track certain keywords or locations or something across all three books, you could use keywords to do that, and it just gives you another way to search for information.
Julie, I have a question about this side panel that you're talking about.
Yes.
Because I didn't know what to do with it, I removed it. So I just have the panel we're seeing on the left with my scenes, and then I have my composing section. Do you know
Mhm.
where I would go to restore that to work with it? And it's cool if you don't.
Yeah, so it should be under your view you can turn things on and off. So you've
Yeah.
got the document, which is this middle part.
Yep.
You can flip to the cork board, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it's basically a way to have a virtual cork board. You can I'm trying to remember exactly where we turn that one off. It's in here somewhere. Let's see.
Mm.
We can hide the binder.
It's called the inspector, I think.
Yeah,
Inspector?
hide
Okay.
inspector. You're totally right. So
Show inspector. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Okay, I've
So
got
so
show
you can so
inspector.
you
Okay.
can show and hide the different panels um as you go. And this is
Excellent.
also the kind of thing, like if you are, say you're out and about and you're writing on your phone or on your iPad or just on your laptop and you don't, like I do, have multiple big screens right here, you might turn these on and off just so that you just have the one window to make it just a little bit easier. And that, but then when you have your big screen, then you can turn all of these different things on. Okay, so you can actually add photos
Hey,
and notes.
Julie,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we go much further, you mentioned a compile feature. What does that do?
So that will take your document and let you export it as a Word document so that you can
Oh,
send it to agents, editors, etc. And we'll go
okay.
through the compile feature on my actual manuscript since it has text in it. We've only got one sentence in this, so the compile would not be particularly useful to look at.
Right on. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So
Can I ask a question too, as long as we're
absolutely.
here? Um, will you also cover how to back up into Dropbox?
Um, Yeah, I don't use Dropbox anymore because they quit playing very nicely with Mac. So I have mine all backed up to iCloud, but you can, if you're using Word, there's the Microsoft cloud that's called
Well, I mean, put everything,
There's OneDrive. Is that what you're?
OneDrive. Thank
yeah, I
you.
was gonna
So
say,
you could do so I do recommend that you do have something backed up, that you don't just have your one single copy of your novel on a laptop or a desktop because everybody's probably had the experience of a motherboard frying or something like that, and it's terrifying to think that you could lose all of your writing. So I definitely recommend backing up. It's going to look different depending on what you use. So like I said, I use iCloud. You can set Dropbox up so that it'll just create a mirror of your documents. And when you save something to your local computer, it automatically saves a backup to Dropbox.
well, and
Um, you could
Julie,
do
that's
that
my
same with
question, whether it's
OneDrive.
OneDrive or Dropbox or iCloud, where do you do that? Because I haven't been able to find it up there.
Yeah, so that's not something that you actually do from Scrivener. It's something that you do on your computer. So that's the kind of thing, like when you go into settings on your MacBook and like turn iCloud on, it'll automatically create a backup. When you set up Dropbox, it'll ask you, do you want to mirror your drive? Margaret, you look like you have a comment.
Yeah, because I thought when I set up my Scrivener, it asked me where I wanted my backups to go.
Okay, so that's different. That's a local backup, and
Oh,
it will
got it.
automatically create just like a second copy of your document on your local machine, but that doesn't help if your local machine dies.
Okay, I thought I did it. I thought I had one on my local machine, and now you're making me nervous. But I thought I had one that backed up on, like when I said save, it backed up on, it went to my local machine, and then when I closed, it went to the
It's
cloud.
possible that you could be putting your backup copy out onto the cloud somewhere. There's really infinite possibilities of how we could set this up. Like I said, I highly recommend that you have a copy not just of your books, but like if you, for example, do your check register on Excel like I do, that you have that backed up somewhere so that if you lose it, you don't lose all of your financial records for the last however many hundreds of years. So I personally have everything backed up to the cloud and on my computer. That's a very easy to do in on Mac. It's very easy to do on Windows if you're using OneDrive. Dropbox, I feel like doesn't play as nicely anymore because I think that's not Dropbox's fault. I think it's actually Microsoft and Apple's fault because they want you to use OneDrive and iCloud. So they made it just less easy. I used to use Dropbox for a long time before it stopped playing as nicely. But yes, so you do want to have um, two copies. What you want to be careful about is that you have somebody who really understands your setup help you if this is something that sounds like a foreign language to you right now and you're not really clear, because I do also have friends who thought they lost the most recent version of their manuscript because it was only saving out to the cloud and it wasn't saving on their local machine. So it's good to just have if that's something that you struggle with the technology, maybe having somebody that is pretty savvy help you set up your backups. So I could show you. Um, I can show you iCloud because that's what I have, but that is not very helpful if you are not on um, yeah, actually, it's not even going to be helpful at all because I've got family sharing and I've got a whole bunch of other stuff that is just, I think that's going to be more confusing. But just know that on your computer, you have a file system where all of your files that you're creating are saved, and it is also good if a mirror image copy of that is out on the cloud somewhere so that if something happens to your physical laptop you have a copy of the file available. So if anybody is like really stressed out about this after this call and we want to talk one-on-one about each individual person's setup, we can probably do that, but I think I'm guessing everybody has a little bit different setup and it might make it tricky to try to do it right now in this format. Okay. Okay, so we were talking about the this panel over here on the right, and I'll just show you the things that I use most often. There is a little spot for a synopsis, and this can be really, really useful, especially if, like I was talking about earlier, you're still working on the foundations of getting your scene structure working. Because right here you can put your scene goal, the obstacles, you know, the outcome, the decision, all of that stuff that we've been talking about when we talk about understanding scene, you can start to outline it here. And I'll show you a little bit later how this can be really useful to you when you look at you can basically auto-generate yourself a synopsis based on the information that you've put here. So you can put anything here. You don't have to put it in scene structure format. You can just say, you know, Julie goes to the coffee shop with a goal of writing the next chapter of her novel and doesn't succeed because she runs into XYZ, right? Like whatever fits for your story, you can put right here. Maybe I should make this a little bit. Does that make it bigger for you?
No.
No?
Mm.
That's
I
good. That's
just
good.
think
The way you
everybody
the way
kind
you just had it narrowed it. So but this looks bigger, at least on my screen.
okay. I just saw a few people like leaning close to the computer, so I thought maybe it was not
So, but in
coming
the
across
bottom
fine.
right hand of everybody's screen, you should have magnifying glasses, or yeah, magnifying glasses that you can plus sign and make it bigger. Then you just have to scroll over with your fingers or your mouse to, because then it'll be bigger than the window, but then you can find where Julie is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry for anybody that's on a teeny tiny screen that's making this kind of hard to see. But I'll do my best to kind of narrate where we are in the window too, so that that can be helpful to you. Okay, so we have the synopsis window, which, like I said, is really helpful. And you'll see when I go to the next scene, this is blank again. So scene structure for second scene would go here in the synopsis. You can also put notes in here. These can be notes to yourself, like I need to research XYZ before I send this chapter off to my book coach, or whatever you need. I don't use bookmarks very much, but like I said, I do use include in compile. And the other thing that I use a lot, and this is where the color coding comes in, is the labels. So you can see here, I have sort of preset up 4 labels that are based on the 4 act structure that we've been talking about: orphan, wanderer, hero, martyr. This, you could name this part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. If you wanted to name it the pieces of Save the Cat, you could do that. If you wanted to do 5 act structure because you were writing a Shakespearean style play, you could do that. So there's really lots of options here, because if you just go down to label and do edit, you can customize as many of these as you want. You can double click and change the color. So for example, if you wanted to add, in addition to your 4 parts of scene, if you also wanted to have color coding for for your uh, different point of view characters, you could do that too. Okay, so whatever you add.
Where did you get, Julie, that thing where you did the color coding, where did you find that?
So if you just go to edit,
Um,
and then if you double click,
go to edit where? I have mine open over on my other screen.
yeah, so if you go to label and
Oh,
you
okay,
go to edit and you select edit from there, it's going to pop up your color window.
okay.
So first, it's, am I losing my pop-ups? Sometimes Zoom doesn't. Can you see this
Yes,
custom
yes, yes.
title label
And I
here?
found it on mine, so I found it.
I
I've
can't
put
find it on mine. Sorry. But
down at
Beverly,
the
I
bottom
interrupted you. You go
under
ahead.
notes, the yellow thing that says no
Yeah,
label.
so
Yeah.
in your inspector
Where's
Ah,
that?
down
got
on
it. Got it. Yeah,
so the
mine just looks a
inspector
little,
is
I
the
got it.
right
No
hand column.
label, first draft.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yep.
that margin is called the inspector.
This right hand side is called the
Yeah.
inspector, and the
Okay.
left hand side is called the binder.
Under. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. I'm good.
Yeah, so you can customize these however you want. Like I said, I tend to do 4 part structure with color coding. If you are not immediately seeing the color coding show up, so like when you select a chapter, you can put the label of orphan on it, and you can see here how these little pink dots are showing up next to these as I assign them to a particular part. Okay. If that's not showing up for you, the way that you pull that up is you go view and you do
Where's view? I don't see where your cursor is.
the view menu along the top.
Oh, okay.
So if you go to view at the top, you'll see, so if you're using Word, some of your menu options are going to be in a little bit different place than mine are. So you might have to look around a little bit, but we're looking for use label color in binder. And that's
Okay.
what we'll put the color coding into the binder for you.
I am I put my entire manuscript, I just copied it over into this. And I started doing and I don't even know if I did it right. I put the title under novel format, I put the title, then I just have Act 1, and I don't know if that's the right part to the beginning of it. And I went down to what is kind of oh, I then I did the on your thing, this here, the scene,
Mm-hmm.
and I started going through and you know, and I don't even remember because this was 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago. And since then, I've tried to just walk away from it because I was so frustrated. I wanted to just cry, and I didn't need to do that. Well, anyway, so I went down to where I thought, the first scene was, and I did a section. And I don't know what exactly, but I have dotted lines there. Are you following
Yeah.
what? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I made those into scenes, and I named them all the way down to where I got where it would be chapter. Oh, wait, what's the last part of it? Oh, so I got down to where Verdi is back from the hospital, and I wanted it to be chapter 2. And all I could make it was another scene. I couldn't even I couldn't know how, I don't know how to make that chapter 2 and not be the last scene of chapter 1.
So do you have your binder turned on so that you can see this left-hand navigation?
Yes, I do. I have
So
everything on.
you can literally just drag and drop stuff. So if this is in chapter 1 and I want it to be in part 2, I can literally just drag it
So I
down.
just take this and drag it down to chapter 2.
Yeah. So you've got chapter 1 here,
Yeah.
and you want to create chapter 2. So you just do new folder, chapter 2.
New folder. Yes, chapter 2. Okay, I
Yeah.
have a folder.
And then you can just drag whichever scenes are in chapter 2.
All right. Now, above it, with it on my screen, above it, I have like 3 rows of those dotted lines. And I don't know why they're there, because, and I don't absolutely, and there's a way to go back to make it all just one thing, correct? To make it all one manuscript and not have it divided into chapters. You keep that, but you can go back to just a full manuscript.
Yeah, so no. Okay. So there's a difference between how your manuscript is divided up on the left-hand side in your binder
Yeah.
and what you're seeing in this middle um pane. So I'm going to show you what the different options are, and then hopefully this will answer your question. And if it doesn't, maybe we'll have you pull your document up and walk you through a few things. So right now I've got the cork board up, and this is
I don't,
literally
how do
like
you,
a virtual cork board. I highly recommend using this to when you're initially structuring your story. That's you can get this so that you can see so that you can see those scene goals that I was talking about and everything else. So you can actually drag and drop things around here when you have multiple things on the page. Like if you decide you want to put this chapter 1 as chapter 2 and the reverse, you can just drag and drop. Okay, so that's when you are looking at the cork board, which is this little kind of
Oh, okay, mine doesn't look like a cork board, but it
well,
does.
right, because you're on a different view. So that's what I'm getting to.
No, the back, I have those two things up. I don't know why it says scene on one and the other one says chapter 2. One of them looks blank, like there's nothing there. My chapter 1.
Okay, let me just show you
Sure. Okay.
what the different options are, because I just think you're looking at it in a view that's confusing you. Okay, so you're in Scrivening's view. That's why you've got these dots,
Yeah.
right? This is what it looks like. Okay, so
Yeah.
each one of these is
Is it a scene?
no. It's
All right, that's what
it's however you built it. There is one of these little dot divisions for each thing that you have put into the novel format. This is not a very helpful view of looking at your document. I don't use this at all because it's confusing, right? Because it's got a part has the same weight as a scene and it doesn't show you the hierarchy. So what you want to do is look in not outline view. What is it doing? Well, I've got a funny view put on right now. What you want to do is have it let me go over to my actual document. Okay, this is my actual manuscript. And what you want to do is you want to have it in the view that will show you the entire document, just like you would have in Word.
And how do you do that?
So what we've got to do is figure out what we've done here. I think it might be just because we don't have enough actual information in the
In the sample?
sample yet. Hold on, let me.
If you want some of us who are on Scrivener to switch screens and try something, I'm happy to do that, if that's helpful. You know what I mean? Like you say, try this, does that work for you? I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how I can't get my actual manuscript to look like what Beverly's and just did. So I don't know what.
Well,
I've
what
obviously
I've got
got
now
something
is
set up.
chapter 1 is chapter 1 and chapter 2 is the rest of the manuscript. And I was thinking I wanted to divide it into chapters or parts.
Yeah. So why don't you can you share your Scrivener and let's take a look and see if we can get you fixed. This will be a good.
Do I just share it like we always share?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So it looks like this is the one oh, it went over there. It should be over. I've got it over on this screen.
We can see it. It doesn't matter what screen you shared it correctly. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
it's
good.
there.
Pardon?
You're good.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So are each
don't know what these
under
lines
chapter 1 are each of those
And see what I did was
scenes?
I have these lines here when it changed to a different what I'm conceiving as a scene. And I was going to try
Right.
to go through all the scene elements to make sure that it satisfied everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly what you want to do.
all right, so those are scenes.
Each one of these should be a scene.
All right, so
It
this
looks
is
like your first chapter is about is about 6,000. So see how you can see at the bottom,
Yes,
your first chapter is
yes,
about
yeah.
6,000 words.
Yes.
So then you can this is another handy tool. You can as you browse through these different scenes that are in chapter 1, you can see how long each one of them is. So when you're working on scene structure, if you have a lot of scenes that are, say, 200 words long, you probably have underdeveloped scenes. And if you have a lot of scenes that are 3 or 4,000 words, you probably have more than one scene glommed together, because a scene is usually somewhere in the realm of, like, let's say 500 to 1,500 words.
Okay, so chapter 1 is there, but it's also chapter 1 is also here. And so should this thing not be chapter 1 anymore? Should it just be part 1? Because this is actually
Yeah,
chapter 1.
it looks like it's actually a labeling issue. Sorry, Julie, because
Yeah,
the
you've just put a label up at the top that you don't need.
What's
yeah,
that? This?
That
the blue
red
one, the
text.
folder.
No, the folder is fine. It's the red text that you've typed in that says chapter 1 opening image hook. You
Yeah.
just don't need that. In fact, what I would put is I'd put opening image hook. I would double click under chapter 1 on that January 1979 Michael. I'd put it there.
Well, that's where it was, because before I've got chapter 1 and that's 6,000 words, but if I go to this one, it's
Right. Okay,
809.
so that chapter 1 is just a container. It's just a
Okay.
container. And
So
it
that
contains
that is
those
the whole business that I have as chapter
right.
1.
But that's just a container, and the
Right.
actual text is in those little white boxes.
All right, those little white boxes have
Those are
lines
your
in them.
scenes.
Okay, but down here on chapter 2, this thing that says scene doesn't have lines in it. Am
Right.
I
It
just
doesn't have any text in it
regraphing?
because you haven't put text in it yet.
Okay. But I do have, this one is a birdie at home. So
That's the whole rest of your manuscript. Because if you
I
look at
know.
that, see it's 57,000 words.
Yes,
So you
yes.
want to just grab chapter 2.
Yeah.
No, just go over into the middle. Nope, go back. Go into the middle pane and just select from chapter 2 to the end of chapter 2.
Oh, select it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know exactly where it was because I got afraid of doing anything till I talked to you. End of chapter 2, chapter 2, end of the beginning.
That's just one scene. Why don't you grab all of chapter 2?
I don't know where chapter 2 is yet. I was trying to figure that out as I went along through here.
So you don't have in your Word document, they weren't broken out into chapters.
No, not to my satisfaction. I was trying to do it in Scrivener and not in my, because I have the whole book, the whole regular manuscript still on a thumb drive. And I'm listening to what you were saying, and I'm sorry, everybody, I don't mean to monopolize this. I've just been scared to death to do anything that I was gonna, and I know that I wouldn't lose it because I still have it in the, but I have made some changes in the very first part that I don't think are on the old part. And that's why I know I have to ask you where I save it to.
Yeah, so you don't want to start making changes while you're in the process of moving over from Word to Scrivener, because
Clearly.
then you'll have to port things across. Okay, will you click on the little arrow that is next to the scene box that's right under chapter 2? Click that little arrow. Yeah, so you've nested your scenes here, which you don't want to do.
Well, these are not, I didn't make them yet because I didn't make, I know all of these are, I haven't put any scene nesting. I haven't put any, I haven't assigned any of this text to a scene yet. But at least I know that I can just drag it down. But so you're saying back up here,
You've done chapter 1 exactly right. So now what you want to do is you just want to do your subsequent chapters like that.
okay, so my chapter 2, but what is, how do I, if I get, so if there is an end of Act 1, I mean, I think of Act 1 as a play. So is this, but we're thinking of it in terms of the overall movement of the book, right?
Yeah. So see where you have this one down below that says part?
Yeah.
So just double click that and change it so that it says Act 2.
Okay. And this is like, but mine is probably a 3-act, correct? Mine's,
Well, we've been talking about 4-act structure, and I think that that is useful
okay,
just simply because it's 4 acts that are 25% of the book each, right? If
okay,
you do 3-act structure, it's 1 act that's 25%, one
okay,
big act in the middle that's 50% of the book, and
yeah.
1 act at the end that's 25%.
Okay.
I
Yeah, I
just
think that's
like it to be,
okay. So if I want to create another, just create a place for Act 3 and Act 4, how do I create those folders?
yeah, so just click on Wounded Birds. Now click the green arrow, the green plus sign that's up in the top bar.
Ah, okay. Okay,
No,
that makes it,
click the down arrow because that added a scene for you automatically. Click new folder.
okay.
Okay, and then just name that Act 3. And that's how you add your chapters and uh your parts.
Okay.
Yeah, Act 3.
Yeah, okay. And then, and if I want to do it again, I would go right under it. But then how do I act? Say if I, now if I go back to chapter 2, I hope this is helping everybody. Otherwise I'm going to shut up.
Whenever you want to add something, sorry, Julie, whenever you want to add something, whether it's a folder, so that's the container that holds all your text, or you want to add a new text page, you go back up next to that little green plus sign, and that, and you hit the drop down menu, which is the arrow pointing down. And that gives you the options for everything you want to add. So you can add new text, you can add a folder, you can add any of the options there. And then even if they show up in the wrong place, you can just drag and drop
You
them
just
to where
drag
you
and
need them
drop
to
them
be.
to do the
Okay.
hierarchy. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. And now and so if I go in, I'm in chapter 2 and I'm going to arbitrarily end of the beginning. I don't know if that was chapter 2. All right. Go back to what you're doing. I'm gonna just listen for a while.
Yeah, so it's going to take you a little while to get it going, Beverly, but
Yeah.
just try to trust the process. You've got it
Okay.
on a thumb drive, so you haven't lost anything, even if you get this messed up somehow, you still have it elsewhere, right?
Okay, I'm not sure that all of this is on my cloud, so I guess I'll just call
Well,
out.
a thumb drive is fine for now,
Okay.
right? I would try to get it on the cloud after you get it transferred over to Scrivener. But the thumb drive is an acceptable backup because it's a different device than your machine that you're working on right now.
And
So
also just because I need to know if I'm doing this right. This is just a trial. I signed up for trial, and then every time I open it, they say, "Do you want to buy it?" And I just say continue because I wasn't sure if I did, but I probably will. So will that maintain what I've done on trial, or do I have to start again with this?
it'll if you upgrade from a trial, it'll keep what you've already got.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for listening and putting up with me. Okay.
Okay, so now you can see in a document that actually has a little bit more text in it, that you can just scroll through your whole chapter. So it tells me that this first chapter is 2,200 words long. It's about 7 pages. You can go into the individual scenes to see how long the scenes themselves are. So you can see like this one's 660 words, this one's 1,500 words. It's just a good way to be able to sort of pace through your manuscript and see how long your different sections are. So I've got a couple of different color coding things going on right now based on which timeline I'm in and which point of view. You are probably not going to have, and actually, Margaret, you might actually have something this complex, but almost nobody else will, because Margaret also has multiple timelines and multiple points of view. But you can see here, I've got Act One, Act Two, Act Three, and Act Four, just like I had over in the sample that that I was showing you all before. The other thing from the right-hand side that I didn't talk very much about is the status. And I use this a lot. I use it to mark the MGs as my critique group. Suzanne is my book coach. And so I have different statuses for different chapters that I use this little status drop down for, so that I can track, like, oh, I've already sent this to the to my critique group, so now it's ready for my book coach. And once it's been through my book coach, then it's a revised draft. I think it's funny that I have a final draft on here because nothing in the history of anything of mine has ever been in a final draft. I'm always still tweaking it. So yeah. So one of the other things that I wanted to show you is that the title that you put over here in the binder is the same as the title that shows up here at the top of your document window, is the same as what you put up here. So that I've got it set up that way, so that, again, I can keep track of who the point of view character is. I've set mine up so that it also has a location and a date because of the multiple timelines, but you won't necessarily need that. Okay, so I said I was going to show you about compile. So say you're Beverly, you finished putting your entire manuscript in here, you finish your revision, and you're ready to send it off to your critique partner. But they don't have Scrivener, and so you want to send them a Word document. You're going to go to File, Compile.
Where are you?
Under the File menu,
So Julie, what happens is when you go up there, we don't see it in
you
this
can't see.
window.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying to
Where
narrate.
is file in the top?
Yeah.
The top menu bar.
Right. Is it,
So if you click on File, there should be an option for Compile
where is file though? I'm sorry, I can't.
in the top menu bar.
You can't see it on
You
Julie's
can't
screen,
see it
but
on
if
my
you're,
screen because
if you're following along, you've got it.
All right.
File where you would go to open a
Oh, up at the top in the computer file. Okay.
Yeah.
On the black line up there. Okay. File and then what?
compile.
Compile. Down at the bottom. Okay.
I honestly think it might be better, Beverly, if you listen and watch and then try it on your own with the recording up.
I just thought I was looking for it in this body of the Scrivener.
Yeah, because trying to do it alongside me is probably gonna be more confusing than
Absolutely.
than
Sorry.
watching and then going back. Yeah, we'll post the recording on this, and you can go back and review any of the things that you need. And like I said, I'm trying to narrate the things that I know are off screen, like that top menu bar, when I'm walking you through it. Okay, so when you're compiling, you have a couple of different options. You can put it into PDF. You could print your whole document if you want to print a paper copy. You can do the EPUB and Mobi. That's Kindle and EPUB. If you were going to try to send it to an e-reader, you can do that format. You can do Final Draft, which is a Adobe format. You can do it as a web page, although I don't know why you would want to do that. But mostly what you're going to want to do is do it as a Microsoft Word doc, because that is the industry standard for for the publishing industry. So you want to make sure that that's selected up here. And then you'll see, remember when I was showing you that include and compile checkbox? Everything that you have checked is going to show up here. So you want to just make sure that your whole manuscript is selected. You want to make sure that you don't have, for example, all your research folders added to the compile and everything else. You just want your manuscript here. And then you, for the most part, you can just use the default settings for everything. You've got like the default will just be manuscript format, and you can just click compile, and then it's going to ask you where you want to save it. So, if you want to save it to your desktop, you can save to your desktop. If you want to put it in your iCloud drive because you're creating a backup, you'll have that option if you've got that set up on your computer, etc. Or if you want to put it in your writing folder, wherever you want to put it, you navigate to that and you click export, and then it's just going to create one whole document that has your entire manuscript in it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Kim, you're shaking your head. You're on mute.
I'm going to have to rewatch this video several times. We had an ant incident. They claimed a donut, but they lost the kingdom.
That's okay. That's why we're making the recording of this right now. So that you can go back and watch it as many times as you need to. And like I said, when you're first starting out, what I really recommend is that I'm going back to the less complicated.
Julie, can I, sorry to jump in. Can I just suggest something that might help folks? Because this is what helped me when I started using Scrivener and was like completely lost.
Absolutely.
When I started a new manuscript, right? So you open Scrivener and it's like, hey, what are you doing? Are you doing a play? Are you doing a novel? So it has these set formats that you can use, and they'll give you it'll be some text, some folders at the side, like these character sketches that you can fill in. If you just want to do your own thing to learn, you can choose no template. You can just choose a blank Scrivener document. So it's going to show you this screen, but there will be nothing on your binder on the left, and you can put anything you want there. So you could just do a bunch of folders, and within those folders, you could put documents, and each of those documents could be your scene. So you can sort of tailor it and not feel hemmed in. And for me, I still use it that way. And I've been using Scrivener for several years. Although this has been like super helpful learning about labels and stuff. So that might be a way that makes you feel a bit more free to jump into it and play around. That's something that worked for me.
Yeah, and this is basically just a blank of the novel in parts template.
Yeah.
That we're looking at right here. The other thing that I want to show you is that if you go up to novel format up at the top, assuming that you started with novel format and not just a blank template, it's going to have some help stuff built right in that will help guide you. It explains compile. This is like a little mini online help system that's just at the top. And there is also a help system in that top menu bar that you all can't see. There's a Scrivener manual and an interactive tutorial available from the help menu that will also help you.
Ooh, she misspelled customize.
Who
Sorry.
did?
If you scroll up, customize is spelled with an S instead of a Z. It's not important.
Oh, I just think it's the British spelling.
Exactly. That's a British.
Yeah.
And the Canadian spelling.
Yeah, I think it's a Canadian company.
Scrivener?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I don't know.
I
Maybe
think
not.
they're British. They're
Are they
British.
British?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, you get to claim them, Vicky.
Liz, did you have a question?
Yeah, You mentioned earlier that you could get the folder headings, like the chapter titles, as titles on the actual page. How do you do that? Because I made in mine, I have the chapter titles, but they don't show up in the document.
Yeah, so you actually that's a little bit of an advanced feature that I set up in the file in the compile settings.
Oh.
Um so when you let me see. You want it to be so that the yeah, if you do chapter heading over here in the oh whoops, sorry, I'm in the wrong thing. I have too many Scrivener windows open. If you do the chapter heading, oh, and then it didn't do it. That's funny. Because I was just going to say you just put in the chapter heading and it
Mm.
how did I do that? I will look that up and I will get back to you. It's one of the it's a compile setting somewhere in there that I've got set up and it's not immediately coming to me. Yeah. So because why did I typed in chapter 2 here, which was totally cheating.
Julie, were you looking to just like go up to the part where it says chapter in the above the text window to where it says like next to the little blue folder and do it there, or was I missing something?
No, she's just wanting it to be revealed in the actual so when you
Oh, in the body of the text itself?
in the body of the text, which is a little bit easier for scrolling. Like if you wanted to scroll through all of Act 1 to be able to see all
Right. I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so that's definitely set up in the compile settings, and I don't think I have enough text in my other one to make it to make it work. But I've got it so that when you get to the top of a chapter, it's got the chapter title in it. And so
Okay.
if you when you go into the compile settings for that, Liz, you should be able to make sure that you have the chapter heading format
Oh,
right
okay.
here, and then it puts it in there. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So if
then
I'm
I'm
following
definitely
the
rewatching.
chapter format, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I just said I'm definitely gonna rewatch this because
Me too.
so much really good information.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, I really recommend if you're like Beverly and you're putting your manuscript in Scrivener for the very first time, that you don't try to use the color coding. Just try to get your basic structure on this left-hand side working so that you've got your chapters in the part that they're supposed to be in and the scenes below the chapters. Just get this structure going. Don't worry about the color coding. Um, in fact, I can just
So
um,
can I ask you a color coding question though,
turn
now that
off
you
the,
said you
yeah,
need?
yeah.
I'm just curious for those of us with complicated stories, what do the colors give you? And so in the sense that why do you want color coding? Is it so that you can say, oh, I have 7 scenes from this point of view, but only 5 scenes from this point? Like, how does it help you, I guess, is what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
And I
So it
love colored office supplies all day long, but
Yeah, I'm a big fan of color coding because it just gives me a visual indication of why of how things are looking. So if I want to look, one of the things that I'm doing right now in my revision process here is I've gone back in and I have added this dark blue point of view, Sigrun. I have added her in much earlier. She, in the original draft of this, she was only going to be in the second half of the novel. And now, as you can see, she comes in Act One. So when I'm looking at this color coding, it's just giving me a visual indicator of what my cadence is between my different timelines and my different points of view.
nice. Okay, that's helpful.
So
Thank
that's what I use it for. But here's what I'm going to here's what I'm going to show you. If the thought of doing this color coding is just completely overwhelming, which it will be if this is the very first time that you've used Scrivener, here is what you can do. And it really does the same thing. It just doesn't give you quite the, it doesn't give you the color coding, but it still works. So you've got chapter one. And if this is your first main character's point of view, you just type it in there.
Mm.
You don't have to color code it. There's you can do with this whatever makes the most sense for you, right? So you can totally track whose point of view it is this way. You can you don't have to number your chapters either. The compile will do it for you automatically. So you noticed when we were in the other document, I didn't have my chapters numbered. I just, because again, I'm dragging and dropping stuff around and I don't want to renumber it every time. So I did this here so that you could see how things work, but you don't necessarily have to put the chapter numbers in.
Right.
You'll also notice I don't have the part numbers in mine either. I have different names for my 4 acts. That I know that they're orphan, wanderer, hero, martyr, but they're called air, wind, sea, and sky. So anyway,
Julie, apologies. I've got to bounce. I got to take that chicken out of the oven, but this was
yeah.
super useful. Thank you. And I've
You-
also been texting with Vicky, and I already know that I'm going to take, right now I'm using just text for each of my chapters, and it's too unwieldy. So I'm going to reorganize and I'm going to create, like you have a folder for the chapter and then each scene as its own piece of text to just and utilize those note pages on the side.
Yeah, I would say if you were only going to take one thing away, it would be that if you break your chapters out by scenes instead of just lumping them all together, it's going to help your scene level writing.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're all working on in this group, right? So I think it's really worthwhile to be able to see what the length of your average scene is, whether you have all those parts of scenes outlined and accounted for in each of your scenes. And I think for the most part, that alone is going to be a real key to helping you use Scrivener to reinforce your good craft writing.
Awesome. And then later tonight or perhaps tomorrow, I'm going to post to the group chat, and maybe you can steer me towards more of the scene level writing stuff that's in the course suite, just so I can refamiliarize myself with that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
cool
Absolutely.
beans.
Alrighty,
All right, thanks,
another
Dan.
ticket.
See some of you guys tomorrow in the coaching call. Ciao.
Take care, Rachel.
Mañana.
Bye.
So, a tiny question,
Yeah.
and I probably know the answer. You have things broken up into parts and then subparts. Now, once I'm just trying to import at this point or copy and paste.
Mm-hmm.
How does it know to break it up between the different acts? I have to do that manually, right?
You have to do it. Yeah. So
Okay.
here's what I would do. Okay. So like if I were Beverly doing what Beverly's doing right now, I would put the full manuscript up at the very top as my first little document. And because then what I can do is I can copy chapter 1, scene 1 into this document, and then chapter 2, scene 2 into this document as I go down through. And I have the full manuscript up here so that if I make some sort of terrible, awful mistake, I can just go back to the original. And then you can just break it out that way, bit by bit. And you don't have to, like, say, oh my gosh, this part stuff is just totally overwhelming. You don't need to start with parts. You can ignore the parts. You can just start with your chapters, and you can break it into parts later. It's never too late to do that. Oh, I dropped this out of
Way cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so when you're starting out, I think simple is best. If you already have your manuscript broken into 4 parts because you've been working on structure with me, then you can do that. But if that sounds like a foreign language to you right now, you don't have to do that. Just get it broken out into chapters, and then as we work through the structural stuff that we've been talking about a lot the last month or so, we can start to build that structure into Scrivener so that you can see what's going on. Because right now I've got I keep switching back and forth between the two manuscripts. So right now I can look at my whole Act 1, and I'm working on a structural revision right now, right? So I know that my Act 1 is 23,000 words. So that's about the length that I'm shooting for. But if my Act 1 was 50,000 words, a 200,000 word novel is not publishable. So I know I've got a word count problem or a structural problem of some kind. So we can look at it that way and figure out, like we can see right now my Act 2 is 29,000 words. It's a little bit longer than my Act 1 because I probably have something in here that I need to pull out, and that's actually what I'm working on tomorrow. So but I'm also at the fine tuning the revision stage, and not at the writing the early draft stage. So like I said, if you're just getting started, don't worry about the color coding. Just get in there. You can open your Word document, do a select all, and paste your entire um, manuscript up into this little full manuscript folder that I just made at the top. Just paste it in right here in this middle section. And then you can just start copying it scene by scene into your chapter formats. And if you have multiple points of view, it can be worth it to put the character's name in the chapter title. But if you just have one point of view, you don't need to do that. Keep it simple.
Julie, in mine, I just put whosever name it was. In my scenes, because it changes in scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that will keep me honest.
Yeah, so you could just do, Birdie.
Yeah, I just have, like, the first one I just have January 1979 Michael, and then at Maria's, and then meeting Birdie for the first time. Those are all Michael.
Mhm.
Until well, actually, oh no, going back to Rocky Hill is Birdie. But anyway, that's how I did it. Kim, do you have Scrivener? Have you downloaded it? Have you done it?
I have Scrivener. I've had it for about a year and a half to 2 years, and I've opened it a couple times, and my
Did you do
reaction
the
has been the
tutorial
same.
that comes with it?
I've just said no and closed it again. But today I opened it and I started working on the character roster, And I
Yeah.
thought I'd just bring stuff in one piece at a time because I don't want to get overwhelmed. It just looks like I'm still getting over brain fog and everything just looks like a mountain of a challenge, and I don't need mountains, I need
Way I
mountains.
felt. That's the way I felt. But I did the tutorial set up about 3 times, and that got me down to the actual basics, but there were some questions that he didn't answer in the tutorial that Julia's helped me with. But and I'm probably going to go back so I don't forget how to make the scene parts.
There
Without
are a ton of tutorials on YouTube. You just go into YouTube and put in Scrivener, and dozens of different tutorials come up, and they're anywhere from 7 minutes to an hour long. And they have different aspects of Scrivener. I'm new this week to Scrivener, but I've really plunged into it. It's complicated. I think the learning curve is a little steep, but I think I'm thrilled with what I'm going to be able to do with it.
Me
So,
too.
Yeah,
yeah.
and there are video tutorials available right from the help menu within Scrivener, and there are also ones on YouTube. So the other thing that's really cool is that there is an interactive help menu. So if you can't find, like if you're watching the recording, and I'm of course on a Mac and you're on a PC, and you cannot find the file option that I'm talking about, you can just type it in to the help bar and it'll tell you right where it is. So if on your computer it's in a little bit different place than what I just said, it'll show you right where it is. So that's another really helpful thing that they've done to just make it easy to figure out. Even though you're right, it has a lot of stuff in it and it's not totally intuitive. I would say just start with the binder and the main document window. Don't worry about about the third pane on the inspector. On the right hand side and all that stuff. Just get the document in there and start playing around with getting the chapters and the scenes broken out so that you can start to see how long your scenes are, how if you have roughly the same number of scenes per chapter, if you don't even have your scenes broken, your chapters broken out, like Beverly was saying that she doesn't have all of her chapters broken out yet. That's part of the process. Like Liz, I think in your manuscript, I think your chapters have multiple chapters in them. I think
Yeah,
when
they're
you start
very
putting this
long.
in Scrivener, yeah, some of Liz's chapters are like 40 pages long, and so that's probably too long. And so that's probably multiple chapters in one place. So yeah, that's another nice thing about being able to have it in the binder view is that you can really see what your structure looks like at a high level. You can see how long your chapters are. So if most of your chapters are 5,000 words and you have one that's 15,000 words, that probably needs to be broken up. Not that every single one of your chapters has to be the same length because it doesn't, but what you're looking for is outliers, right? Something that's vastly off from what everything else is. If your chapters are between 4 and 5,000 words, then when one's 1,000 words or 10,000 words, that should stand out to you. And you should just look at it to see if something else needs to happen.
I'm curious, Julie, you mentioned about that a scene should be between 5 and 1,500 words. What do you have the same kind of rough guideline for chapter length, or is that more topical?
That's really more topical to me. I would rather have everybody in this group really be thinking about scene length to make sure that your scenes are really well developed and doing what they need to be doing. Because the truth is, you can and I do this all the time. I'm dragging and dropping scenes in and out of chapters all the time, moving them around. Because if it's a discrete unit where we have grounded the reader in the time and space, and they have a scene goal and it leads to a decision, that discrete unit can very easily be moved. Sometimes you have to change what happens immediately before or immediately after when you do that, but quite often it's very easy to drag and drop those things in and out of time, especially when you've got multiple timelines that you're weaving back and forth between. Sometimes moving something 2 chapters up is not moving the chronology of your main timeline. It's just moving where it is in relation to the other timelines. And so then the cause and effect isn't disrupted by dragging and dropping it around, as long as you actually have a scene that really has a beginning, middle, and end and a goal and all of that type of stuff. Yeah. So what other questions do we have?
I just wrote down, so a scene should be between 500 and 1,500 words. Is that what you said, Julie? Is that what you said?
That's an average. That is not a set in stone.
Okay, because I just clicked through mine. I think, I've got one that's almost 900, one that's 2,000. So that one's got to be, the whole thing at Maria's has to be, and 700, 500, and 300. So, but then I checked, if I have to do 70,000 words, I have to add 6,658 words to this thing. And I don't know where I'm going to do it. And that was another thing. So you know what I did the last week is I read comps. I read the comps that you gave me.
Excellent. I'm very glad to hear that.
4 steamy romances in one. And
I told you my tastes run toward the steamy.
No,
so
and I think you're right. I think I have to steam it up. I'm going, oh, well, that'll be about 1,000 words per. Yeah.
Now listen, my client Suzanne writes very sweet fade to black Regency romance that has no spice on the page. There's maybe a chaste kiss, and that's it. That's totally fine. There's absolutely readership for that. You do not have to add spice if you don't want.
I know.
It's just that when I'm thinking of
I think there's room for it in mine.
Yeah.
I think there's room for it. It's not a Regency fade to black. These are real,
Well, and the real
but that's what I did last week. Instead of work on this, because I couldn't figure out Scrivener. So I just said, screw it, I'll just read smutty books or spicy books or whatever.
Well, so soft porn.
Yes.
The thing that lends itself to having a little bit of spice in yours is that one of the really best ways to show that that Birdie is the right one for Michael and not Maria is to have that chemistry. It doesn't have to be the amount of sexy time on the page, but just the chemistry between them as a contrast to the lack of chemistry with Maria.
Right.
So it's all about tension, right? Like sex scenes in romance. I'm not talking about erotica, which is a whole different thing. In romance, sex scenes are there not just for sex scenes. They are there to move the character and the plot forward and to create tension. So that any level of spice can create that tension because of chemistry.
I felt like I should be going through writing. And I read these, I'd be reading along and I would say, okay, so where did, and I was trying to do it through scene structure, I was reading it analytically and not for enjoyment, even though they weren't bad. I mean, your choices were good. I went to the bookstore and I asked for them. And I actually said, well, I have to read some comps. So I wasn't owning up to them being, my choice, but I learned a lot.
Good.
Maybe, well, nothing that I didn't know, quite frankly, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a really good exercise.
Yeah. No, I thought it was
to read those comp titles and look at how.
Wow.
So Liz, I found the thing that puts the chapter title at the top of your page. You want to go to view. It was hidden. You want to go to view text editing, and you want to do two things: show titles in Scrivenings. So that middle panel, that's your Scrivenings for Scrivener. It's a weird thing. And then I put only show Scrivenings titles for folders so that it's only showing the chapter title and it's not putting the scene title in there. But that's up to you. You could put the scene titles in there if that's helpful to you. But those are both from that view menu under text editing.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah.
Now,
I knew it was there. I just when I'm doing things live, sometimes it's hard for my brain to come up with the exact menu option. Um, yeah, so like just in summary, I know we've been on for a while, and I'll let you all get on with your evening. But okay, so you can see, Liz, because I've got the colors turned on, it's showing it as a big and bright pink, which you may not want in yours. But when you're getting started, create your novel format. I would recommend just creating one little document up at the top, which you do by clicking the down arrow next to the green and doing new text, calling it full manuscript, and pasting your whole Word document in here. Then you'll have it right at the top, which will make it easy for you to create your chapters and put the scenes in. And like I said, if you have multiple main characters, you might want to put the POV character into the chapter title. But if you don't have to. And then once you get all your chapters in, if you find it useful, you can think about whether you want to use parts to reinforce that scene structure with the orphan, wanderer, hero, martyr that we've been talking about. I find it very useful. Your mileage may vary. As we were talking about, as Dixie mentioned, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there with additional help on Scrivener. I also have some on my YouTube channel, but there are also some on the help menu under video tutorials. So those are kind of the key things that I would have you work on when you're thinking about using Scrivener. And I also just want to say, because I don't think I said this yet today, this is not required. If you want to use Word, you can use Word. Plenty of writers only use Word. I have found Scrivener very helpful to reinforce my craft learning and my learning on structure. And since that's something that we've been talking about a lot, I think that it can be very helpful for writers to use it. It's also less expensive than Microsoft Word. They just up their prices on their subscription this month, so I'm a little sensitive to that.
Well, also, I'd say when your document becomes very long, and it's so nice to have it broken up, because otherwise you are scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And I've heard this as I've heard people say this, I haven't experienced this, but with extremely long documents, actually, Microsoft Word doesn't always handle that well. And I don't know what the specific problems people have had, but I've heard that from writers.
My document is 119,000 words and I have never had a problem.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, I had a lot of formatting issues with my verse novel because I think the document size was quite a bit bigger because of all the formatting of the white space. And it would just crap out in the middle of I mean, it was, 560 pages long, again, because of that white space. It's only 63,000 words, but it's quite long in page count. So, yeah, definitely. I have a client who does verse novels, and that also has a lot of formatting in it because it's kind of in a script format, and it crapped out, and she lost like whole day worth of work. So I've never had that happen with Scrivener in the whatever 12, 13 years I've been using it. Yeah, right. Knock on wood. And so I tend to trust it a little bit more, but again, it is not required, and you can absolutely use Word if you want to. I think that that Scrivener is a fun tool, and I like having all of the research and the character sketches and the log line and the pitch and the synopsis and everything all in one place so that I can look at it. Sure, I could dump it all in one folder on my laptop and navigate to it and whatever, but I like having it all in one view in Scrivener. So, any other questions? I know.
I want to make a quick comment that might make people giggle. A colleague was telling me he was reading a story that took place. I don't know, there were lots of, suspension of disbelief things, right? Supernatural powers and other planets and all that. He said, I was totally on board until the main character lost their dissertation because they only had one copy of it. And he said, that's it. I lost confidence in the entire book because nobody writing a dissertation would only have one copy in one place. And so based on what we are just talking about with backups, I thought you would all appreciate that. Yeah, that does.
I figured I'm not sure that he's correct on that. I think I know a lot of people that are Luddites and are a little resistant to certain technology things, and yeah.
Yikes, that scares me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully not, right? Hopefully not, but you'd be surprised how many people are really wonderful, talented writers that really struggle with the technology side of things. And I kind of assume that that must be the case in academia as well.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong, but yes, I think you're right.
I would like to be wrong. I just often get reminded that since I come from a high-tech background, that was my previous life before publishing, that I have a different skill set than a lot of writers. So I try to keep that in mind when I'm talking. I'm sorry if I went too fast on certain things tonight. Yeah.
Oh, Julie, I want to thank you. This has really helped so much. It's just been great. I know that I have a lot to learn, but I feel comfortable going forward and touching things because I was afraid, I thought it was all going to combust on me or something.
Yeah, no, the very low chance of combustion. So you're fine. And you're always welcome to bring a Scrivener question to the coaching calls or to post it in the community, and we'll get your questions answered, or we'll find
Do
it.
we have 2 more coaching calls, Tuesday and Wednesday this week?
Yes.
Yes?
We have Tuesday and Wednesday this week?
That's what I had written down.
We do. We have Tuesday and Wednesday this week. So yeah, there you go. We've got look who hadn't looked at the rest of her calendar for the week yet.
Well, we've never done that. We've never had even a craft and then 2 right together. So I thought maybe that I was wrong.
Yeah, no, I did that because I took the last 2 weeks off to be with my kiddos before they went back to college yesterday. Sob.
Yeah.
It's so quiet here today. I can't even tell you.
Julie, I just want to say I probably, at least at this moment, I probably won't use Scrivener because I have enough trouble as it is. However, I do have to back up my manuscript. It is not backed up.
Oh, Susan, you really need to, especially because your computer has sometimes so many issues. So
Yeah, my computer, I swear to God, I put everything in New York Times, and I keep finding areas of it in there still that are in another font. I can't believe it.
yeah, well, so that is another thing. Like if you have a document for a long time, like a one word document that you have for a long time and it goes through multiple upgrades, I do also sometimes think Word gets confused by that.
Maybe
Like
it
if you
did.
started on, I know you've been working on this for many years, and maybe it's gone through multiple updates to both your Mac operating system and to Word. That can, I have seen that. I had font problems in my that was one of the problems I was having in my verse novel. It kept throwing Courier in there, and I was like, no, Times New Roman.
Julie, I
Like
have
there's
one
all
more
kinds of different.
question.
Yeah.
On when you had your manuscript up, the regular one or the one you were working on that you were showing the samples, it had like periods instead of spaces, and it had all the paragraphs marked.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
is that a particular uh look? Do you go somewhere to, I mean, mine is just in its plain word uh font.
Yeah, I have let's see, that's
And
called
I think Dixie's does that every once in a while when she brings it up. Somebody's does. And I think it's hard to read that way with the periods instead of the spaces. And I didn't know, and I think God, the one that is writing about about the fortune tellers, hers comes up in that other format.
Those of us who are anal about, one space versus two spaces and things like that, we like to see those.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
probably shouldn't show that when we share it with the group, but it's usually show and then it has the paragraph symbol and then hide paragraph symbol. I don't remember where it is on Scrivener.
Yeah, it's under text editing and it's called show invisibles or hide invisibles. And
Okay.
I always show it because I want it to show
I have text tidying under edit.
Um, so on the mat, it's on your main banner, there's a little paragraph thing, that a paragraph symbol, like the backwards P that says invisible.
Yeah.
So it's across the top, but not the way top on your,
Yeah.
you see
Yeah.
it? And they're sort of 2/3 of the way over if you're starting at the left. So
Okay.
all the way to the right, it'll have a little thing that says invisibles.
Okay. I'll look for
See
it.
it? Do you want me to share so you can see where mine
Sure.
is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you on a Mac, Margaret?
I'm
I
on
am.
a
too. Okay.
So okay, but the problem is, wait, so it's right here. Do you see it? Where my
Oh, no, it's not on my,
I
it's
was
not.
going to say you actually have more things turned on yours than I have on mine.
oh, I
Yeah.
see.
So
Okay.
so that's another, I mean, that's another sort of tricky thing is there's lots of different options. Um,
Are there new updates all the time on Scrivener, or does it stay the same for a while?
it stays the same for a while, but there's a lot of different things that you can turn on and off in the view window. Um, that
Okay,
that change
scrivening,
it
corkboard.
pretty.
Oh, there's the corkboard. Okay.
Yeah, so like when I was sharing my screen, you didn't see that paragraph mark.
Okay.
But
Well,
now I'm trying to figure out which
well, text editing there, show invisibles. Okay, so if I
yeah,
do that,
that's what you want.
okay, I got it. All right. All right. I'll go back to text editing, hide invisibles. I don't mind it, and there may be a point for it, but right now it makes me jumpy. Thank you. This
Yeah,
has been absolutely wonderful and helpful. I may
good.
speak
I'm
again.
glad it was helpful. And if you all have more questions, we can talk about them on the coaching calls this week or any subsequent week. Susan, we can eh, I'm worried because of the age of your computer that iCloud isn't going to work for you for a backup.
Susan,
So I wonder,
do you have an external some kind of drive
Would
at
do
this?
that. Yeah, I can put it on an external drive. The thing is, I have done that, but it's changed drastically.
yeah, you might want to just like periodically do it, like once a week or something like that, especially with all the times that you're traveling with that laptop. If it's, I mean, I've had like my bag fall off the bathroom stall in an airport
Oh,
and shatter the screen. Like I have a better bag now for my laptop so that can't happen, but because it only happened once and it was, yeah. So just with all the times that you travel, Susan, like before you take your laptop out of your house, maybe back it up and leave the thumb drive at home. And that way, if something happens to your laptop, your bag gets stolen, it gets left on an airplane, whatever, you're not losing that manuscript that you've
Let
been
me
working on for
tell you,
decades.
I had a small, very small backpack, and that small backpack was on me when I was traveling with the computer in it. I only took it off when I had to go through the.
Right, but if something, there's so many things that can go wrong when you travel. Like now, what I want for you, Susan, honestly, is for you to have a fireproof safe where you put that thumb drive.
Right. And yes.
We
I have a lockbox. I do have a lockbox. I could put it in there.
we have a backup drive,
With
and
my,
periodically,
with my important papers. I do.
yeah, put it in there with your important papers and put it back up.
Okay. Okay. Good
And-
idea.
And
Good
if you're really uptight, or I mean, so when I was doing my dissertation, I literally mailed my data to my father-in-law who worked for the CDC at the time. So you could email a whole copy to a very trusted person and say, don't open this, but here's like it's external. If you don't have a cloud access, it's a way of giving it
I'm gonna
to
see if I
something
can.
else.
My friend that I was telling you about that is the graphic novelist, she emails herself her document every day. When she finishes work, she emails it to herself. And then if something happens, that email is available to her. I just have mine saved to the cloud and I feel pretty confident with that. But again, it's finding the thing that gives you peace of mind based on your level of technology and what you have access to. I have access to a very high-tech setup because we're nerds. We come from that world, right? And everybody doesn't have that high-tech setup, and that is okay. You don't need that high-tech setup to be a writer, but you do want to protect yourself. Because heaven forbid something happens to that laptop, Susan.
Oh, I did lose text. There was a point where I lost a bunch of text, but then I had a hard copy and I just was able to figure out what the changes were that I'd made because I had made various changes and then it wasn't there. Suddenly it wasn't there. What happened? But I was
So stressful.
yeah. Well, when it happened, it was stressful, but then I figured it out and it worked.
Are you home, Susan? Are you home?
I'm back in New York. I just got back.
Okay.
I just
Go
got-
to Staples or go to whatever, get a thumb drive, even, I don't
I
know,
have it.
the
I have
biggest one you can,
No,
and
I
take
have
on it tomorrow,
I have a big one.
tomorrow.
I just
Yeah.
have to put it in.
I would just do it periodically and definitely before you take the laptop and travel.
Yeah. No, that's very.
And a firebox wouldn't.
I just want to say, yeah, well, I can put it in that box. I just want to say that I did my first draft in 2021, but then I was sick for a whole year and I did not work on this. I stopped working until I joined your group.
Mhm.
And I said, I have to do something to get back in. So I have been working on it. It of course, it has the whole thing. It's just now, I'm just trying to do all the things that have to be done on the scene level.
You've made so many changes and so much work. You don't want
Yeah.
to lose all that.
Yeah,
Oh,
you've done so
God.
much good work on it.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, so in 23 is, I think, when I joined.
Yeah, May of 23 is when Liz and you and Dixie, when we had that first 7 weeks to
Right.
7 week revision course. And then we for those of you that don't know, we got to the end and they said, what are we doing next? And I said, give me a month to figure it out. And I came back and I made this group because I didn't have an answer to the question. And I'm so glad that we did that and that y'all are still with me.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too. Was
Yeah.
it 7 weeks?
And that we have wonderful new members now too. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
alrighty, well, I hope I will see some or all of you tomorrow. And if you think of your burning Scrivener questions after we get off of this, I'll answer them tomorrow or Wednesday or in the community.
Okay.
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 See you there.
You.